Hello you guys, welcome back to Enshrouded, and today we're going to be looking at the crazy wizard build that you need to be running in Enshrouded. This is by far the strongest build in the game, and after a couple hours of playing it, switching from a melee build, it's just not even close. I'm going to go over all the skills and everything this build takes, and if you follow step for step, you're going to be doing this. So there's really no crazy requirements for this build, except that you need to be far enough in the storyline to be able to use the alchemist to essentially get the infinite spells. Now first we're going to go over the gear, then we'll go over the skills and the spells and exactly how you run it and be OP with this build right off the bat. Now firstly, I am using the Elder gear set because it's the most powerful gear set for spellcasters as of right now. Now this can be found by farming a legendary farm, which I will link in the description below on exactly how to do that. But this equipment is a bunch of random drops, so you'll have to run that farm to get all the pieces. And some of the big things to note for the helmet, you get magical crit strike chance and critical strike damage. Again, we get health and mana here, damage against magical foes, a magic damage multiplier, mana regen, and mana regeneration again. And with our 2 rings, we're using the Ring of Rapacity, meaning we get negative 20 mana, but we get plus 20 mana regeneration. And it makes our mana regen go absolutely insane. So the second you cast a spell, you regen all the mana. You're never going to run out of mana with this. It's like 100% guaranteed. And I'll go over exactly how to get the rings in just 1 second. Now, if you haven't already found all the legendary pieces for the Elder stuff, or you can't quite do the farm yet, a solid option here still is to go into the Alchemist, and you can get one of his sets. Make sure you take one of the damage sets, such as the Archmage hat, which is going to give us a bunch of crit strike and magical damage bonuses. And this set is very similar to the Elder set, it's just a little bit lower level. That being said, you can use one armor set or the other. They're both fairly easy to get after enough time. Now the rings in particular are a big part of this build because of the mana regeneration. So one place you're going to want to go to get these, and you can get them every time just by restarting and going to the main menu, is first go to the Revelwood Fast Tower. From here, all you're going to do is go down here to the bottom left to Willow Crush, and the rings are going to be located right here, as I'll show you right now. As you can see, all you have to do is walk up into Willow Crush, get rid of 1 or 2 enemies, and this chest will be right under this little decking area. All you have to do is dig it up with your pickaxe. You'll get the ring, restart the main menu, do it 1 more time, and now you have double rings of rapacity. That's all you need for the gear. It's fairly easy and straightforward to get. So second, we'll go ahead and talk about the weapons before we get into the skills. So for our weapons, we're going to be using 2 different weapons. You can use either. I just like switching back and forth depending on the scenario. So first is the legendary staff Shroudweaver. This is a weapon you can get no matter what. It's a constant spawn in a chest, and I'll show you how to get that in just a second. The main perks here are it does fire magic damage, which is great versus the Shroud, and it also gives us crit strike chance, which is solid. This is a great staff to use against the Shroud, especially when using fire spells, because it just annihilates them with your fireball. And like I said, it's super easy to get. The way to get the Shroudweaver, very easy, is to come to the Sun Temple on the bottom right of the map, jump right over here to the custom marker, and you can just jump right down there on a little bridge right by the edge of the Shroud. There's going to be that chest waiting for you right there, and it'll spawn that way every single time. Now the other staff we're going to be using is the Root Staff. Now this is a legendary drop that I got just from doing the legendary farms. I like this because it gives us plus the poison damage and a lot of actual mana buffs. It leeches 5% damage as mana, which is a big one because if you do 1,000 damage, you're going to leech 5% of that as mana. That's kind of big. And then it also increases our crit chance, which is big again. So I like switching back and forth. This one I like using out in the wild. The other one I like using for the Shroud. And then finally, it doesn't really matter which one you use. I like using the Luminous Wand. It gives us a little more Shroud magic resistance because we don't have the most health in the world. Some fire magic damage, which again is great for the Shroud because it's effective on them. And so any Luminous Wand or any fire wand that you can get with some of these buffs is really good to use. That being said, you can always have your sword and shield out, hit Q to quick swap over to your actual staff, cast your spell, let go of Q, and then immediately hold right to block. And you can see with this combo, it lets us do our quick attack and immediately post up in the block position so we can take some damage from any enemies that are walking on us pretty quick. So those are the weapons. Let's talk about these skills and what makes this build so tremendously good. So for our skills, we're going to go over every skill and the best ones to take, especially after the patch recently. So first off, you're going to take the entire Battle Mage tree, every intelligence node, Arcane Deflection for gaining mana on successful parry, Unity, so that way wands have a 24% chance to recover our mana, which is great. Sting, which repeated wand damage is increased by 20%, a big damage buff for our wands, and 30% chance to spawn an extra projectile, again more damage and projectiles for our wands equals bigger damage overall, and then spirit, and then the intelligence node, so that way our magic damage increases by 5% per attribute point, meaning it's going to increase by 50% since we do have 10 intelligence. And then we want to take blink. This is one of our vital skills. It makes us be able to move out of the way from attacks very easily. You also want to take emergency blink, and how that works is if you're being stunned, you're still able to use it and break that stun state, because if you get stunned as a mage, you're kind of in trouble, right? So definitely take that. Unlike a lot of builds, I'm not taking any of the healer tree because of the nerf to water ore. You really don't need it. We're going to reallocate those points. So then we're going to go to the wizard tree, and you're going to take just about everything except for these three and this one up here. Basically the intelligence and spirit nodes. Then we're going to take this as the way. So when attacking with a magical weapon, all our damage is increased by 10%. Necromancer, so that way when killing an enemy with a magic weapon, you get a 10% chance to summon a skull companion. It's honestly solid, and it's an extra target that they're not attacking you. Then we want to take the spirit nodes again, arsonist and pyromaniac, for additional fire damage since we're going to be running the fireball. Then we're going to take radiant aura, so all fell foes within 10 meters take fire damage per intelligence per second. And then all fell foes again take extra fire damage, and they're going to take 20 fire damage every single second just by standing next to them. So this is a great skill. And then we're going to take thunder and lightning, so that way we get additional shock damage, because we do get a bunch of shock boosts with this mage build. As you can see right here, we're going to jump to wizard, so that way your crit chance is increased by 10%. And then chain hit, so that way on a critical hit with a magic weapon, the attack will automatically hit a second enemy within 15 meters for 5 shock damage per intelligence, boosted by our shock damage buffs back here. Then mass destruction, so that way a magic weapon crit will hit all enemies within 20 meters of the target for 2 shock damage per intelligence, meaning that's going to be another big amount of shock damage. And then intelligence here, so that way you again get increased magic damage, 5% per attribute point, which we have 10 of. Then we want to take dark arts for all shroud damage, and abyss for again all shroud damage bonuses to shroud damage, bonuses to fire here, and bonuses to shock, making our build just completely overpowered. You also want to take quick charge. This is a must have if you're going to run a mage. First thing you get, because it reduces the time it takes you to charge your staff spells by 50%. Then we want to take counter strike for reflecting extra damage. We want to take Beacon as an ability to punch that can stun foes. Then we also want to take tear, so that way on crit with a spell, the target actually gets stunned for 4 seconds, and you can stun a lot of enemies this way. Also arcane concentration, so that way you get 1 spirit for every 2 levels of flame that you have, meaning you get a bonus 3 spirit here. And then obviously we do want to take our endurance, run our double jump, just because you need to have that in Enshrouded period. And finally we're going to branch over here, which these two don't really do you much good, but you want to do this for the skills below. So spirit and then bloodletting, so when scoring a critical hit with a magical weapon, there's a 50% chance to spawn 2 health, mana, or stamina orbs, and this effectively makes your screen light up like a Christmas tree, because every time you fight enemies, you're going to be dropping all these health orbs and stuff. You don't ever have to worry about healing, stamina, nothing like that. And then life burst, so that when killing an enemy with a magic weapon, all players within 15 meters of the target gain health equal to 3 times your intelligence. So again, you're going to be getting even more healing here by default. And then blood magic, so when your mana drops below 20%, you restore 20% of your max mana at the cost of 1 health per mana. And we already will never run out of mana, but just in case we do, this is going to save us. And then with some final points that you have, throw them in constitution nodes where you can, just to increase your overall health. Those are all the main skills you're going to need to be completely unstoppable with this build. And for our food, there's a bunch of regular food that we can use. Now definitely you want to make these mushroom omelets, because they're going to give you +4 intelligence, boosting your overall damage by 20%. And again, take as many intelligence nodes as you can to boost your damage at 5% every single point. We then obviously want to make sure we have our rested bonus intact, and also take constitution food, meaning things like meat wraps or regular meat, to bump up our constitution and health, because our health isn't that high. And then in addition, you can take things for stamina recharge, even though as long as your rested bonus is high enough at the end game, you're not really going to need it. Now, as an OP wizard in Enshrouded, there's 3 main things you need to do. But we want to use Acid Bite as our primary damage ability. And as you can see here, as long as you get up close to an enemy and cast Acid Bite on any big boss or enemy, you can basically take them out in 1 single cast. Additionally, with other big groups of enemies, you can cast Acid Bite and grab a couple of them. And what it's going to do is chain that lightning out from our skills out to other enemies and do a lot of damage that way to a large group of enemies at once. Other enemies sometimes are resistant to poison attacks essentially, and so you can use your fireball spell as an alternate for your Acid Bite. And since your fireball spell actually shoots and does a ton of damage, I mean, it can do 1000 damage easy in a cast. It also explodes into other fireballs around you as long as you have the correct skills that I've shown you. That's going to do damage to a bunch of enemies in a large area, and it can help get rid of enemies very quickly that don't respawn quite as well against acid bite. And with our cast time from our skills being greatly reduced by 50%, you're going to be able to cast all of these spells very quickly back to back and in quick succession. Again, using our blink to dodge out of the way of enemies. And then we can also use our light burst to cast it and push enemies back. Quickly switch over to another spell, cast acid bite or fireball again, and go right back to town. And that's why the wizard is the most OP class by far. Make sure you subscribe on the screen, check out this Enshrouded video, and like the video if you haven't. Peace.